25 years ago, Margaret walked away from the love of her life to pursue a career that promised everything except happiness. Now, standing in the doorway of her childhood home after her mother's funeral, she sees her Diana with silver streaks in her dark hair and eyes that still hold the universe. Some loves don't fade. Some loves wait. And some loves deserve a second chance, even when you're 53 and thought you lost your chance at forever. Margaret's hands trembled as she turned the key in the old Victorian's front door. The hinges creaked with the weight of decades, releasing the musty scent of memories she'd spent 25 years trying to forget. Her mother's house stood silent now, a monument to choices made and roads not taken. She'd flown in from Boston that morning, her executive assistant already fielding calls about the merger that couldn't wait, even for grief. Margaret Chen had built an empire in commercial real estate, her name whispered with respect in boardrooms from New York to Shanghai. She had everything she'd dreamed of at 28 except the one thing that had mattered. The funeral had been small, dignified, attended by her mother's bridge club and a handful of distant relatives. Margaret had stood by the grave in her Armani suit, feeling every inch the successful daughter her mother had molded her to be. She'd felt nothing but numbness until she'd turned to leave and seen her dot Diana Thornton stood beneath an oak tree, partially hidden its shadow. She was 53 now, just like Margaret, but time had only refined her beauty. Her dark hair, shot through with silver, was pulled back in the same loose way she'd worn it in their 20s. She wore a simple black dress that spoke of elegance without trying. But it was her eyes, those impossibly green eyes that had stopped Margaret's heart mid-beat. They hadn't spoken. Diana had simply nodded, a gesture that contained universes of things unsaid, then turned and walked away. Margaret had watched her go, just as she had a quarter-century ago, feeling the same tearing sensation in her chest out now. Alone in her mother's house, Margaret moved through rooms frozen in time. Her mother had kept everything exactly as it had been, the floral wallpaper, the antique furniture, even Margaret's childhood bedroom with its twin bed and fading posters. It was a shrine to life Margaret had abandoned. She found herself in her mother's study, surrounded by leather-bound books and the faint smell of lavender sachets. On the desk sat a cream-colored envelope with her name written in her mother's precise handwriting. Margaret's fingers shook as she opened it. "My dearest Margaret, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I have something to tell you that I should have said long ago. Diana Thornton came to see me every week for the past 10 years. She never married. She never stopped loving you. I was wrong to make you choose. I was wrong about so many things. The life I wanted for you brought you success, but did it bring you joy? There's still time, my darling. There's always time for love. Her address is 47 Maple Street. Go to her. Mother." Margaret's vision blurred as tears finally came. 25 years of tears for a love she'd sacrificed on the altar of ambition and her mother's approval. Margaret sat in her rental car outside 47 Maple Street for 30 minutes before finding the courage to move. The house was a charming craftsman bungalow with a wraparound porch, painted sage green with white trim. Wind chimes sang in the evening breeze, and the garden burst with late-season roses. Diana had always loved roses. The years fell away as Margaret remembered their apartment above the bookstore, where they'd lived on love and ramen noodles while Diana finished her master's in literature and Margaret built her first property portfolio. They'd been so young, so certain that love would conquer everything, until Margaret's mother had gotten sick, or so she'd claimed, and insisted Margaret come home. Until the ultimatum came, the family business or that lifestyle. Until Margaret had made the worst decision of her life. The front door opened before Margaret could knock. Diana stood there, barefoot in jeans and a cream sweater that made her skin glow. She looked at Margaret with an expression that mingled surprise, wariness. And something else, something that made Margaret's heart race like she was 28 again. I got your letter, Margaret said, her voice barely above a whisper. My mother's letter. Diana's eyes glistened. She called me 3 months ago, said she needed to make things right before she ran out of time. She paused, seeming to search Margaret's face for something. I'm sorry for your loss. She was a complicated woman, but she loved you. May I come in? Diana stepped aside and Margaret entered a world that felt like coming home. The house was filled with bookshelves lining every wall, stacks on tables, a reading nook by the window with a worn leather chair. Classical music played softly in the background. It was everything their apartment had been fully realized. You became a professor, Margaret said, noticing the university texts. Comparative literature at the State College. I teach Jane Austen to 19-year-olds who think romance died with Instagram. Diana smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. You became exactly what you set out to be. I followed your career. Chen Properties is legendary. The formal distance in Diana's voice cut deeper than anger would have. Margaret had expected fury, recriminations, slammed doors. This careful politeness was worse. I didn't set out to be alone, Margaret said quietly. That just happened along the way. Diana moved to the kitchen, putting the island between them like a barrier. Would you like tea? I have Earl Grey. You used to love Earl Grey. You remember. I remember everything, Margaret. That's been my problem for 25 years. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with all the unsaid things, all the years of silence. Margaret watched Diana's hands, those beautiful, graceful hands she'd once known better than her own shake slightly as she filled the kettle. Why did you visit my mother? Margaret asked. Diana was quiet for a long moment. Because she asked me to. Because she was dying and wanted forgiveness. Because ... She turned, and the vulnerability in her face made Margaret's breath catch. Because she was my last connection to you. They sat on Diana's porch as twilight painted the sky in shades of amber and rose. The tea cooled in their cups, forgotten as words 25 years worth, finally began to flow. I built everything she wanted, Margaret said, staring at the darkening street. The company, the reputation, the success. I married Richard, you probably knew that. He was appropriate, ambitious, exactly what Mother approved of. We divorced after 8 years. He wanted children. I wanted ... She couldn't finish. You wanted what you couldn't have, Diana said softly. I wanted what I'd thrown away. Margaret turned to face her. I thought about you every day, every single day for 25 years. I'd see someone with dark hair on the street and my heart would stop. I'd hear a laugh in a restaurant and I'd turn hoping. I subscribed to the local paper online just to catch glimpses of your name in the faculty announcements. Diana's expression was unreadable. You could have called, written, come back, I tried. Margaret's voice broke. 3 times I came back to town. Twice I saw you, once at a coffee shop with a blonde woman who made you laugh, once at a gallery opening. You looked happy. I couldn't bear to ruin that. The 3rd time, I made it to your office at the university. I stood outside your door for 20 minutes, listening to you teach. You were brilliant, passionate, exactly what you were meant to be. And I realized I had no right to disrupt the life you'd built without me. The blonde woman was my colleague, Sarah, married with 3 kids. Diana's voice was tight. The gallery opening was a faculty obligation. I went home alone to a glass of wine and a book like I did every night. Like I've done almost every night for 2.5 decades. Diana, you don't get to do this, Margaret. Diana stood abruptly, her composure finally cracking. You don't get to show up after 25 years with your sad stories and expect me to just ... What? Fall into your arms? Pretend we're still those kids who thought love was enough? Love was enough? Margaret stood too, closing the distance between them. I was the fool who didn't believe it. I chose security over happiness, approval over authenticity, my mother's dreams over our reality. And I've paid for it every day since. So have I. Diana's eyes blazed. Do you know what it's like to be left? To have the person you love look at you and choose something else. I begged you, Margaret. I literally begged you to stay. And you looked at me with those cold eyes and said it had been fun, but it was time to grow up. Margaret flinched at the memory. I was trying to make it easier. Well, it wasn't easier. It was agony. I cried for 6 months. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. My mother thought I was dying. And then I got angry, and I used that anger to fuel everything. Every degree, every publication, every award, it was all spite against you for making me feel like our love was something childish to outgrow. The silence that followed was broken only by Diana's ragged breathing and the distant sound of wind. Chimes. I'm sorry. Margaret's voice was barely audible. I'm so desperately sorry. Diana sank back into her chair, suddenly looking exhausted. I know you are. Your mother told me. She said you'd never been happy, never really lived. She said breaking us apart was her biggest regret. Then why did you keep visiting her? Because ... Diana's face softened. Because she was suffering too. And because every week, for just an hour, I got to talk about you. She'd tell me things that you'd donated a wing to a children's hospital, that you'd funded scholarships for LGBTQ+ students, that you'd never brought anyone to family events. It was pathetic, but it was all I had. Margaret knelt beside Diana's chair, not touching but close enough to feel her warmth. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect anything. But I need you to know, you were the love of my life. You were the love of my life. Everything else was just me trying to fill a void that only you could fill. Diana finally met her eyes, and in them, Margaret saw the same war she'd been fighting between hurt and hope, between self-protection and the terrifying possibility of trying again. I don't know if I can do this, Diana whispered. I'm not 28 anymore. I can't recover from you twice. Then let me prove I won't make you have to. Margaret stayed in town. She told her assistant to handle the merger, shocked her board by delegating responsibilities she'd never trusted anyone else with, and rented a small apartment 3 blocks from Diana's house. She wasn't rushing anything. She was building the way she should have 25 years ago. It started small. Coffee on Tuesday mornings before Diana's early class. Margaret would be waiting at the corner cafe with Earl Grey and a scone, and they'd talk about Diana's research on 19th century women writers. Diana would mention a leaky faucet, and by evening, Margaret would have arranged for a plumber not intruding, just caring from a distance, on Thursdays. Margaret started attending the community theater where Diana volunteered with costumes. She'd sit in the back row during rehearsals, watching Diana pin hems and adjust collars on high school students performing Midsummer Night's Dream. Their eyes would meet across the darkened theater, and something would pass between them: recognition, remembering, and something new, possibility. 3 weeks in, Diana invited her to dinner. Not on the porch this time, but inside, at the small dining table surrounded by books. Diana cooked pasta primavera, and Margaret brought wine from a local vineyard. They talked about everything except the past Diana's students. Margaret's realization that success meant nothing without someone to share it with. The novel Diana was writing in her spare time. You're writing? Margaret's face lit up. You always said you would. I'm trying. It's about second chances. Or maybe last chances. I'm not sure which yet. Can I read it? Diana hesitated, then nodded. I'd like that. You were always my best critic. Honest but kind. After dinner, They moved to the living room, and somehow neither could say who moved first. They ended up on the couch, sitting close enough that their shoulders touched. Diana handed Margaret her laptop, and Margaret read while Diana pretended to grade papers. Sneaking glances at Margaret's reactions, the novel was beautiful, lyrical, and heartbreaking, about two women who find each other again after decades apart. Margaret recognized them in every line, their story transformed and transcendent. Diana, Margaret breathed, closing the laptop carefully. This is extraordinary. This is publishable. This is... She turned to find Diana watching her with an expression that made her heart stop. It's us, Diana said simply. It's always been us. I couldn't write anything else. The space between them crackled with tension, with 25 years of longing. Margaret reached out slowly, giving Diana every chance to pull away, and tucked a strand of silver-shot hair behind her ear. Diana's breath hitched. I want to kiss you, Margaret whispered. I've wanted to kiss you since I saw you at the funeral. Since every moment of every day for 25 years. But I need to know, is there any chance you could forgive me? Could want this again? Diana's eyes filled with tears. I'm terrified. What if you leave again? What if your company needs you? What if I'm selling the company? Margaret said it calmly, though her heart raced. I've been in talks all week. I'll stay on as a consultant, but I'm done with Boston, done with that life. I'm 53 years old, Diana. I finally know what matters. And what's that? You, a life where I wake up next to the person I love. Where success means growing a garden together and reading on Sunday mornings and being brave enough to choose love over everything else. I can't get back the years we lost, but I can make sure we don't lose one more day. Diana's hand came up to cover Margaret's, pressing it against her cheek. I never stopped loving you. God help me, I tried. But you're burned into my soul. Then let me spend the rest of my life making up for lost time. When they kissed, it was soft and tentative at first, two women who'd loved each other as girls, finding each other again as the women they'd become. But then muscle memory took over, and it was achingly familiar and thrillingly new all at once. They kissed like people who'd been holding their breath for 25 years and could finally breathe again. They didn't rush. They sat entwined on the couch until midnight, kissing and talking and laughing and crying, filling in 25 years of gaps. Diana told her about the book club she'd joined, about her nephew who was transgender and how she'd become his fiercest advocate. Margaret confessed to therapy, to finally accepting herself, to the gay youth center she'd been secretly funding. At the door, Margaret pulled Diana close one more time. Thank you for not giving up on the possibility of me. Come back tomorrow? Diana asked, vulnerable and hopeful. Tomorrow and every day after, if you'll have me. I'll have you. 6 months later, Margaret and Diana stood in front of the same oak tree where Diana had watched Margaret from a distance at the funeral. This time they stood together as the mayor pronounced them married. Surrounded by Diana's colleagues and students, Margaret's small circle of true friends, and a front row left empty except for a framed photo of Margaret's mother, a woman who'd made mistakes but found redemption in her final act. Love doesn't have an expiration date. It doesn't care that you're 53 instead of 28, that your hair has silver in it, that you've lived entire lives apart. Real love waits. Real love forgives. Real love gives you the courage to choose again. The heart always remembers. The question is, are you brave enough to return? Have you ever wondered about the one that got away? Are you living the life you were meant to live, or the life someone else designed for you? It's never too late to choose love, to choose authenticity, to choose yourself. Share this story if you believe in second chances. Comment below about your own journey to finding or reclaiming love. And remember, your heart remembers. Maybe it's time to listen. Want more mature lesbian romance stories that celebrate love at any age? Follow for tales of courage, redemption, and hearts that remember how to hope again.